Of all the games I've watched this year, that I think was my most fun tape that I've watched was the Seattle defense in that game against Arizona.
How hard is it to blow out 3 teams in 9 games? I mean, real blowouts. Not like it's like an NFL game where it's, you end up winning by 10 or 12, but it was close throughout the first 3 quarters. I mean, absolute bruising, molly-whopping destruction in 3 out of 9 games.
Yeah, that's not easy to do at all. And you look every week and we see these games end up being closer than we thought, or we see upsets. It happens every single week. So to go out there and just hammer somebody, and do it as many times as they have. I mean, and we'll get into this, but that was defensively for me of all the games I've watched this year. That I think was my most fun tape that I've watched was the Seattle defense in that game against Arizona.
Why?
Because it is so. I would say it's the physicality of the contact. I think so many times in the NFL, it's somewhat of a brother-in-law experience, right? You don't see as many big hits. We grew up kind of watching the NFL and how violent or how physical it was, and a lot of that's been kind of taken out of the game. There was nothing that was, beyond the rules, but they were flying around and just smacking people in that game. 42 he's becoming, as I watch them every week, is becoming one of my favorite players. I mean, we talk about in scouting, like you got to shoot your gun, like see it and just go, trust it and run through contact. And he did that multiple times in this game. You see Emmanwori flying around. You see Chenna taking on blocks. I always forget, is it Okada or Okada, by the way? Okada. So there's a puller in this game. And this is, we've kind of had our little phrases that we've grabbed onto this year. So here's my one for this week. There's 3 ways that you can treat a puller as a smaller defender. You can, and they're all A words. You can avoid him, you can absorb him, or you can annihilate him. And somebody forgot to tell Okada that he's not, 300 pounds, because he sees a lineman coming and he is a heat-seeking missile to go to initiate the contact. There is a very physical brand of football that they're playing there, and it was fun to watch.
Are you trying to get a AAA deal? Is that what you're trying to do right there?
Oh, great call.
Didn't even think of that.
Hey, why not? I've got the card.
Avoid, absorb, annihilate. I don't know if that's quite AAA's mantra.
Your insurance is going to be a little more depending on which one of those one of those techniques.
It's interesting that those are the names that you jumped out, that you point out. The one guy that, look, obviously we've talked a lot about Leonard Williams. No disrespect to Leonard, I still think the straw that stirs this drink and is kind of making the whole thing happen. But over the last few weeks, I can't get Demarcus Lawrence out of my head. He just impresses me nonstop, and we getting to see a little bit of the personality off the field. And there's been a lot of talk about what he does for the team and the professional attitude. And he's also seems like a pretty fun guy and can be silly at times and all of that. But on the field, he is a lot better than I thought he would be at this stage in his career.
Yeah, and I know anytime 48 finishes his lunch, and if he leaves a little food on the plate, I know that he's going to come clean the rest of it right up, because that's what he got to do in that game, is just the right Johnny on the spot, right man, right place, right time on those 2 touchdowns. But there's a physicality he plays with. I didn't think it was singular to him, though. When I watched that whole front, they all played with a heavy-handedness, a physicality. And we'll get to this game this week, but both these teams play very similarly with how firm they are.
So why do you think that? Every team in the NFL talks about playing physically. Every single team talks about using their heavy hands and bringing all of that. Every team talks about it, and for the most part, every team should have guys that are capable of that. Are the Seahawks more physically talented? Are they playing harder? Are they more attuned to why would they be doing more of that than other teams?
I don't think it's a mistake that if you were to look at the physical teams defensively, that you would find a direct correlation to the amount of depth that they have on that defense. I think they roll guys through. I think they keep them fresh. I think they know they don't have to put a governor on how they play because they're going to be rolling guys in and out. And the Rams have a lot of depth. The Seahawks have a ton of depth. When Philly's rolling, Philly has a ton of depth. They're rolling. They have an alpha unit and a Bravo unit. They run full hockey changes out there. And so the guys are freed up to play as fast and full throttle on every single snap. I think there is that's a component. I don't know that it's discussed enough, is that the depth of your front, how valuable that is.
I love that. Essentially what you're saying is they're playing hockey, not soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you play as hard as you can for one shift in hockey for 45 seconds to a minute versus, 90 minutes of just kind of messing around and flopping on the ground when you play soccer. And, like, I would rather have my football team play as hard as they can on every snap than take a few off knowing that third down is going to be bigger. Like, no, bring in somebody else for that down.
Yeah, I talk to Harbaugh every week down here with the Chargers, and one of his things he's always talking about, and obviously you can draw the connection and the through line there with Seattle, is that he hates the word marathon associated with football. He said that there is nothing about it that's a marathon. This is a sprint. Every play is a sprint. Every game is a sprint. The season is a sprint. Like, there's no pacing yourself. It's you're going hard, and one of the reasons you can do that is because you have guys you can roll through there. He always talks about the first 3 steps of every snap. Whatever position you play, like, there has to be a conviction and a firmness with your first 3 steps, and an aggressiveness to it. And I think, man, when you know that you don't have to do that for 65, 70 plays as a defensive front player, that's a huge advantage.
How long did it take in your conversations with Jim for you to not fill in the pauses?
Oh yeah, probably a month, probably four interviews. I just lay back and let him go. Yes. My favorite thing, though, I'll be honest with you, when we first started doing these, because we had to do them once a week. I know you guys do it with Coach McDonald, but yes. I just figured out, okay, I got to change my motive, because we're doing an interview for the pregame show, and so the initial thought was, who's playing, how do you slow this part of this team down? This is their strength. This is our strength, like really game centric analysis. And then I realized that you're not going to really get anywhere with that. So I've been able to, and money is the same thing. Like, I just want to have an interesting conversation with him. And like, one of my favorite conversations, I was like, Coach, you use boxing analogies all the time. How did you fall in love with boxing? Or what do you, and we talked for 5 straight minutes on the boxing and the similarities with football and the footwork and being able to throw jabs, and that's what sets things up, and then to set up a headshot. Like, he went on this long, great conversation there, but you got to definitely change your motives when you go into those.
Who was the player a few years ago, DJ, coming out of Clemson that was characterized as positionless? And he went to Arizona, and I was like, oh, man, that guy's like 6'3", he's 240, he's a linebacker, he's a safety, he's an edge, he's all these things, and the career never materialized. And I bring that up because right now we're 9 games in, about 5 games, because Nick missed 4 with an injury, and we're watching Emmanwori play linebacker, play big nickel. Coaches talked about playing a little safety and doing all of these things. Why? What? I guess the question is, I think it was Simmons was the last name. In some way
Isaiah Simmons.
Isaiah Simmons.
I was trying to look that up. Yeah.
Isaiah Simmons. In some way, why do I have a little nervousness about Nick Emmanwori doing all of these things, and wearing all of these different hats, and maybe like, whoa, calm down. Very different players versus what you're seeing from, again, just 5 games in. Should I have a nervousness?
So I can tell you right now that the nice thing that they have going there is that they have a clear blueprint to follow, because I've seen every game that Derwin James has played in the NFL, and I saw him early on come on the scene and play down in the box majority of the time and have a tremendous success, Pro Bowls, all pros early on, got paid. And then, different coaching staffs come through, and it's like, well, man, he can do so many things. And it was we're going to go week to week, and we're going to play him high, and then he's going to play, as a nickel, and then he's going to play dime linebacker, and he could do all these different things. And you saw the impact start to diminish a little bit when he was spread so thin. And now these last couple years with Jesse Minter in there, they've really got him focusing on, for the most part, being the big nickel, spending a lot of time down in there in the box, and asking less of him and getting more of him. So I always think it's hard when you have a player like I would imagine when Lamar Jackson came into the NFL, obviously he was incredible, but there was no blueprint really for that. Even, you could go with the athletic quarterbacks we've seen in this league. He was unlike anything. So you're having to create something without anything to go off of. I think there's a clear blueprint for them to follow.
Okay, then compare and contrast Derwin James, who you see every week and have for years, and you saw and scouted out of college. Compare and contrast him with Emmanwori.
I think they have very similar physical traits in terms of the size, the speed, the athleticism. I think they both play with tremendous energy. I like them both as blitzers. I think Derwin has a little better instinctive feel for the game. That would be kind of the one difference. And Derwin, to me, you could put Derwin, you can line Derwin up over Kelsey and let him cover him, from snap one to the end of the game, and he's very, very comfortable in man coverage. I would say Emmanwori's a little bit behind in that regard, but I think he's very impactful when he's down low and he's around the action.
Is he and the rest of this Seahawks team, are they built to try to stop this Rams team?
Yeah, I mean, look, if Stafford's in a groove and humming, I don't know that anybody's, built to stop him when he's locked in like he has been. I mean, I went through all his stuff the other day. And, if you had a horse tournament with quarterbacks and just said you got to make, throw, and the guy behind you's got to make the same throw, he would win hands down going away, because he can make every single throw from every arm angle. The touch that he has, the ability to drive the football, I think he's the most gifted thrower in the league. And you pair him up with McVay, who's as good as it gets. It's a very, very tough challenge, but I think your best shot is you've got to get into the wide receivers. You've got to be physical, and you've got to disrupt some of that timing. And if he beats you on the second play, if he beats you on some of the extended stuff, you live with it, but don't let him get in that rhythm, in that flow, back football going.
I guess I also then sort of mean, we keep hearing about how the Rams are using 13 personnel, right? Yeah. And all the tight ends and throwing out of these big, heavy position groups, not unlike what the Seahawks have done. Are the Seahawks, with guys like Emmanwori and a few others, not just him, and then the ability to get to the passer with just 4, is that the antidote for that kind of an offense?
It's always going to be that. If you can stop the run with less, that's going to be the key. And I think they have as good a shot of anybody to do that, because of not only the point of attack players they have, but again, to reference where we were earlier, keeping those guys fresh and rolling them through. I don't think they have to load up to stop the run, maybe as much as some other teams might have to.
But then on the other side of it, what will the Rams do? Because we keep hearing, the Seahawks are throwing out a heavy personnel, and that's where the explosive plays come from. And Sheil Kapati was on the station yesterday saying that as well. At some point, aren't teams going to say, all right, well, we're going to have to shut down this explosive passing game, so you're going to have to run on us? Will the Seahawks be able to do that if that's the direction the Rams go?
Yeah, I think you're going to kind of see more of that, which is, what's happened. And I'm sure you've talked to a bazillion folks. Everybody's seeing the same tape and saying the same things. But, they're trying to get you in single high looks to throw the football. So they're doing that with heavy personnel, and then they're getting more opportunities to throw the ball. And I think what you're going to see is teams that are, just going to say, okay, well, it's going to be a slow death. We're going to still stay with our 2 high looks, and maybe we can get to that from, being down and then getting out. But we're going to stay with that kind of umbrella lid coverage. And if you want to, we'll take our chances with a little bit lighter box against the run, and you're going to have to run us out of that before we're going to sit there and give you those favorable single high looks that you want. I think that's kind of where we're headed with that whole thing.
Where are the Rams most vulnerable in this matchup? Seahawks personnel, either in any phase of it, take special teams out. We know that's not been great for the Rams. Where are they offensively, defensively, to your tape's eye, the most vulnerable?
It's a good question. I still think you can get to them a little bit on the edge with your rush. I think you could be a little susceptible to some power out there. So, I think that to me is going to be a real firm rush plan off the edge. And then the other side of the ball, to the perimeter. I think the more the game's played in the middle of the field might be to your detriment. I think you want to get this thing out to the perimeter.
Yeah, I think Baldy kind of talked about their corners. If there is maybe a matchup if Horton is healthy and can go, and Cooper in is savvy, and obviously JSN doing what he's doing to everybody, is there an opportunity to maybe speed-wise pick on those corners?
I think it's speed-wise, and I just think you're just getting out there and making them tackle. That to me is make them tackle your athletes out in space, out in the perimeter. Don't play the game inside the mud. They want to play that game inside. And one thing I would be, if you're asking me what concerns me with the Seahawks in this game, what would concern me is they're really good at running games with their inside guys. So they've got power rushers on the edges, but then they're really good at pick stunts inside, and they're going to challenge your communication with your interior 3. and not having your starting center is a little bit of a concern there. So that would be, something I would keep an eye on. They're going to have to be really, really not only firm inside, but they're going to have to see and communicate really, really well.
So you're a SoCal guy. You live down in SoCal. We had Colin Cowherd on earlier in the week. Tell me about the market down there. Are the Rams the buzz? Are the Rams the talk? Do the Rams move the needle in this matchup between these two 7-2 clubs? A big deal down in SoCal right now.
It's hard as someone who's doing the Charger games. I mean, I'm at the SoFi. Every time I'm at SoFi, it's the Chargers, and so. And I live in San Diego, so I'm not seeing any Rams jerseys down here. There's still a big Charger following down here in San Diego. So I don't necessarily get all the Rams feel for that. But, I mean, golly, the guys, they won a Super Bowl. They had a history of being in Los Angeles. The Dodgers, to be honest, have kind of taken up all the oxygen in that city for a while. So, I don't know that there's an overwhelming sense that they've captured everyone down here. But they played good football since McVay's been there.
Hey, when we talked to you last week, it was right before the trade deadline. And then just a few minutes later, I don't know, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes later, the Seahawks ended up trading for a receiver, one of the things we talked about, but not specifically Rashid Shaheed. You mentioned speed on the outside. Yep. He's got that for days. What did you make of the deal they did make? And then, I guess similarly, what did you make of the deals they didn't make as Mafe and Reek Woolen and other guys ended up staying put?
Yeah, I like the fact they kind of kept their defense. They kept their depth there. They're going to be able to absorb an injury if it were to happen. I thought, there was a chance they might try and go for an interior offensive lineman, if nothing else, than to have some insurance and some depth there. But I thought, you go get speed, and I thought they were smart in how they got him the ball early. You flip him a reverse, you put him in the backfield. Like, you can do a lot of different things with him as he's getting up to speed, so to speak, no pun intended, on the offense. And I think he's a great complement, and that's why we were – stressing that, wanting some speed. So I thought you guys were going to come out the chutes and hit me on the Bradford situation, by the way.
He had a good game. After all that conversation, he went out and he played like his best game.
Baldy did a whole breakdown. You see Baldy's breakdown? He was on with us this week too.
No, I kind of want to clarify that. Like, there's no player that has all strengths. There's no player that has, all weaknesses. But, I mean, that was a perfect game for him. It was 35-0 before he finished taping his ankles. And then they were able to go out there and run the living heck out of the football, which is what he is at his absolute best at. So, I mean, that was an example of, okay, this is where he's at his best. And we had a game that played out that way. That's awesome. I still have, and, it's not trying to be offensive or mean, but there's some concern. You get into a game where you're going to throw it 45 times. He's, of that offensive line, he's the least athletic. For every 2 steps that you see Zabel take, he takes 1. Like, he just doesn't have that same type of foot quickness. So when you see, that type of game, that's just my only concern for an offense that's been absolutely humming. But again, the guy's tough. He's physical. You get in a run game, he is going to play really well, and he did.
Well, this will be a great test based on what you said there and the speed they have and the movement they have and everything that they do defensively. This will be for him, and now a new guy next to him, and Olu. Well, not new, but they played together, and he's been around. He too is kind of a power guy, and the strength is his run. So this will be an awesome test for them. Lastly, a year ago, it wasn't in that building because of the fires. It was played in Arizona, but it was 9 sacks on Sam Darnold. The last time he played this team, he was bruised, battered, hammered, season over, time in Minnesota over because of those 9 sacks to the Rams. Does that play any role? Is that in the back of his mind in any way come snap one Sunday?
I think he's happy with the current health and status of the tackles he's got right now versus where they were health-wise in that game last year. So I don't think there'll be much carryover. New team, new offense. They also have ways where if they are getting pressure, they've got run after catch options, and they just added a new one at the trade deadline where they're going to be able to get the ball out of there.
I wish we could ask. I have so many more questions that I want to ask you, and we're not allowed to ask you. So we're going to have to set up something off the air to just kind of.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we're going to need like a little separate Zoom call or something for the real info that we're not allowed to talk about here on the show. But DJ, congrats on what sounds like a really incredible experience and a great week, and even more great to have you on. We are pumped. I mean, Fox might not be pumped for this game. They're like, we got the #1 crew, but we're not going to send them there. We're going to send.
Are they really not?
Oh no, they've got to send them to Minnesota and Chicago.
Wow.
Tell me that's not an insult. Wow. That is insulting. That's straight up insulting. Okay, they can't flex it to Sunday Night Football. Fine.
Based on that one.
Dude, that's insulting. That's crazy. Minnesota, Chicago instead of this game?
Yeah, I was lobbying that we get these two matchups. I was wanting to go just baseball, man. Let's just play the game at 9:00 in the morning. Let's take a nice little break, little day-night doubleheader. Let's go play the night.
That would be quite a situation. Well, DJ, we appreciate it. We'll do it again back on Tuesday next week as we'll get back to our normal time. But thank you as always. We'll talk to you then.